Welcome to something a little bit different here. I'm trying a Dissecting Design, this time with a classic game, and I'm doing a run of Castlevania. So we're going to go through every stage of the game and talk about the design and structure of it. And let me know what you think about this kind of format for going through these classic titles. But Castlevania is one of the very first, action-adventure kind of titles that came from a third-party developer, in this case, of course, Konami. And the game is very interesting in its design and structure. The platforming is committed. As soon as I jump in the air, our friend, I always confuse Trevor and Simon Belmont, whatever his name is, will jump in a fixed angle. And if you saw right there, when we fell, we just fall immediately. Gravity takes over. Now, the items and sub-weapons that we pick up are loosely randomized. Some of the candlesticks will drop set items based on the number of ones we've hit, or the number of drops that have happened on screen. With Stage 1 here, this is again your introduction to the world of Castlevania. So our friend here is trying to defeat Dracula, and we never know if this is called Dracula's Castle or Castlevania. But this first stage is a good intro to the rules. Right here is a little bit of a speed run strategy. You can get bounced over that wall, but I'm not good at it, so I went the long way. But this is the first encounter a player has with death pits, and there are many more to come. The longer you stay in the section, the worse it gets, so speed is definitely of importance. Now, enemies in Castlevania are fixed knowns. They will spawn in based on the screen position or where our main character is. But typically, if the enemy is already on screen, killing them will basically remove them from memory, or they will not come back, unless they are meant to be spawned endlessly. Kinda had an issue there, which is why I paused. Now, the sub-weapons we'll talk about in a second, but I want to talk about our whip here. The whip itself does not grow in power. And that is a big point, a difference between Castlevania and other kind of action games. Typically, these games become harder because of the fact that if you die and you lose your power-ups, you can't kill enemies as fast. In this game, as I'm swinging my whip wildly there, all it determines is the length of my attack. Now, the sub-weapons each have their own utility to them. So far, we've seen the dagger, the stopwatch, and the axe. But we'll also be making use of Holy Water, especially near the end of the game, and the Holy Cross, which is actually a boomerang in the American version right here, because Nintendo didn't want to get into trouble with Christianity. Now, one thing that's kind of confusing about Castlevania is at the stage designations. It says we're on Stage 4, but technically we are really on Stage 2. And to make this dissection easier, we're just going to refer to the stages based on every time we clear a main boss. Now, as you can see, the level design has definitely taken a turn in this second section. We have a lot more pits. This is the first time we're introduced to a moving platform jump, which is arguably harder to do. Now, we're going to be getting a power-up very shortly in this level that I'll explain when it shows up, but we're about to be introduced to the famous Castlevania enemy, these Medusa heads. The Medusa heads are not that hard to fight. There are a fixed pattern every time, that kind of wave formation, and your whip is wide enough that you can hit them fairly easily. They're a lot easier to hit than compared to Ninja Gaiden's bats. But the problem is that in Castlevania, any damage will send you flying backwards, and if I would have gotten hit there, chances are I would be dead. But don't worry, the deaths will come later, and we'll fast forward through them. So far, most of the enemies we've fought have been on the passive side. Even the Medusa heads just kind of work on their own. Here's another staple of Castlevania, the wall meats, they give us health, and it's the only way to recover health in the game, as health will not drop from the power-ups. The hearts that we're collecting are mainly used or only used for our sub-weapons. Different sub-weapons have different costs. But the sub-weapon utility basically depends on the weapon itself. The dagger is your weakest sub-weapon, but it gives you full range. The axe is stronger, but it throws in a lobbing formation. It's good at hitting enemies above or below the character. And in action games like this, where your movement is kind of committed and fixed, that can be very powerful. What makes the boomerang really useful is the fact that it can hit an enemy multiple times, and that comes into play later on. Now what you see right here is a Roman numeral for 2. If you pick up enough hearts, or let enough hearts drop without switching your sub-weapon, you'll gain a 2, and then eventually you'll gain a 3. And simply this allows me to throw out 2, or by extension 3 sub-weapons at the same time. This can be borderline game-breaking for some of the boss fights. Now right here we're introduced, oh, and there's our 3. But right here, this is going to come back later on in the game, the hallway of Medusa heads. And because of the cheap cost of the cross, that was not easy to say either, I just used them here, and we're going to just overload this fight with them. Another thing that I didn't mention, I don't know why the game paused there, is that as you get further in, the amount of damage enemies do increases. But typically most enemies will not grow in terms of health, with exception to a few of the more trickier or frustrating enemies that we'll talk about later. But right now this run is going really well, and some of these sections will arguably be easier or harder depending upon if you can preserve your upgrades or your items. I'm picking up the money bags as a way of gaining more lives, but the game features a very generous checkpoint or end system. If I die and run out of lives, I simply restart the stage that I'm on. Now these little flea men, or hunchbacks, however you want to call them, are the first example of very frustrating enemies. Their pattern is entirely random. Not only how they jump, whether it's a high jump or a low fast one, but also how they move in relation to the character. You're going to run into another enemy here with these crows. And again, flying enemies are very dangerous, and developers really like to place them in sections like this. We're going to have a close call, ooh, right there, but you saw just how far I got knocked back by that crow. But the screen width is very important in this game. If an enemy gets pushed off screen, they technically cease to exist. But unlike, again, a game like Ninja Gaiden or Ghosts and Goblins, once they're killed, they are removed. So that's why I'm having kind of trouble dealing with this guy. I was hoping he would jump that gap, which will allow me to engage, like right there. But what happened at that point was because we were past the screen position where the enemy was told to spawn, we basically got rid of him. If I would have gone backwards there, he would have respawned. So let's watch a little bit here. And as you can see, again, the Medusa heads have returned. And you can dodge around them, but in other cases you just want to kill them or get them off screen as quickly as possible. Killing that, oh, I just took another hit there. Killing that skeleton like that with a cross saves me a lot of trouble, especially when those Medusa heads will spawn endlessly. Again, I'm trying to preserve the cross, because once I switch weapons or sub-weapons and die, I lose the bonus. But right now, I'm just trying to be as cautious as possible, because death will send me back to the last checkpoint. And if we lose all our lives, then we go all the way back to the start of this level. But again, we're making really good time, at least, I guess not counting speedrun players. Now you saw the stage transition, so that would be considered another checkpoint. And I hope everybody knows, again, about kind of how these levels are evolving in terms of their obstacle design, and just what they're throwing at the player. Now, I will say that Ninja Gaiden feels a lot more responsive for most of the game until the very end. And Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden have a very stark difference in terms of how they handle the final challenge, and we'll talk about that near the end of this video. But again, I'm always being cautious whenever I jump over pits. You never know what's going to spawn here. Now I think I'm going to get, oh, and that, I don't think I should have hit that Medusa. I think that should have connected with me, but we got lucky. Now, again, with this boss, this is a 2 against 1 fight, but both enemies will take health. I was looking around for any wall meat. As long as you get them both on the same side, you can strike them both at the same time. But I'm trying to use the combination of all those crosses just to peck away at them. But that fight could have gone a lot worse. And you'll kind of see me having to adapt later on when we get to the second to last section of the game. But so far, this has been a perfect run. So we're going to move on here. And I guess in terms of lore, we dropped down to a pit for some reason. Don't know why, but we are. This is the first level where things tend to get a bit nasty for players, especially if you're not used to the platforming. You see these enemies, and there's a little bit of a slowdown there, but we don't need to worry about that. But these enemies in this level are going to spawn based on the screen, as well as where I'm at. And it's very easy, considering how wide these platforms are, that I'm going to get knocked off. I think there's maybe one little bit of slowdown later on, but that's about it. If any of these enemies here would touch me, it's a life. And this is the first, and probably not the last time in a Castlevania game that we have these situations. Now, this part right here can throw new players for a loop, as it looks like that is ground where those skulls are, but it is not. Now we need to duck here, and for this part I get lucky. But you need to wait for that platform to hit the edge, because again, you drop down immediately. There's no control. But this part can throw players for a loop, but if you get past it, the rest of this level is fairly benign, except for one part. And that's the Flea Man hallway of death here. The enemies are going to be spawning in at random spots. Not only that, but they're going to drop the Flea Men at different positions as well. Usually I found the Holy Water to be safer, because while it is a shorter range, it stays on the ground, allowing you to hit enemies who are either moving around or are giving you some trouble. So as you can see, I had a lot of damage here. And this is where I thought I was going to die. We just casually walk underneath that dragon. But there is a piece of wall meat here that's going to help out. But again, having the sub-weapons and their increased potential due to the Roman numeral is making the game a lot easier. Now here's the power of the cross with doing multiple points of damage at a time. It just directly counters these dragon skulls. But we're going to be coming up to our next boss in a second. As again, I'm just gathering as many hearts as I can, because again, I'm not speedrunning this by any means. But as a bit of a rare occurrence, we have a fake wall here that simply gives us an item. Also notice that it's very hard to make tile-wide jumps due to the committed design. Now we have a Flea Man, and we have Frankenstein, or aka Frankenstein's monster. He's going to be jumping around at random intervals, as well as throwing fireballs. He will not count as damage, only hitting the monster will. But that takes care of him. And I believe that this next level is the one that really frustrates people on a casual play. And you'll see why as we talk more about it. But yeah, we are at this point only 2 levels done. But I will be fast forwarding at the next stage. Again, I'm preserving my cross because of how useful it is, but unfortunately I'm going to have to say goodbye to it. Take note of that skeleton throwing those bones in the air. If they leave the screen, they no longer exist. The same goes if I try to throw something while I'm above, basically I'm in the UI panel at the top. So I got rid of the cross here for the Holy Water because it basically makes or breaks this level. And you'll see several examples of this as we get further on. Again, these skeletons move at a random pattern. And I'm trying to use the Holy Water here to trap them. As you saw, it was used to kill that bone there. But I'm also going to be looking around for, again, false walls. There's no indication what's a false wall other than just you smacking it. Dodge him. And again, because I killed the enemy, he's removed from memory and will not respawn. Doing those tests. And let's watch a little bit more here. Now, this enemy, the Red Skull, is technically the most durable enemy in the game, but it's also one of the weakest. by the fact that any hit will knock them down, and then you just move and just go forward. Now, those candlesticks up there, I can only assume that the only way to hit them is if we use a battle axe. But again, the holy water is the superior item here. Now, screen transition. And now these are the tough enemies. What makes them tricky is that they are programmed to always walk backwards as you approach them. They will also throw their own axes at random positions, either up high or down low, and then the axe comes back as a boomerang. They take a lot of damage from the whip to go down. However, the trick, and I didn't use it here, is to use holy water, but you'll see that in the next part. Now I'm going to get unfairly hit in a second because of that little smack there, but he'll die in another shot. Now the hell hallway is going to be in the next area after this. So while we're waiting, with Castlevania, again the slower pace I think helps it a little bit more than Ninja Gaiden. Because enemies will spawn but are still limited, it means you're given room to breathe, while Ninja Gaiden just constantly overloads you. So right here I'm going to use the holy water trick. We're going to throw it, and as you can see, it does multiple ticks of damage, which makes it a lot easier to fight these guys than using the whip and chase them down like this. So I'm going to back up, let the water do its job, and the water will also kill the axe if it's going along the ground or the low throw. And again, it's just such an easier method compared to what else you're doing. Alright, there's numeral 3. But the holy water is not really needed for it. Yeah, I'm just trying to fill up all my health. But really, it's not necessary if you know what you're doing when it comes to the Grim Reaper fight. And because that fight's going to go by so fast, I'll explain it now. The Grim Reaper moves around the screen at fixed angles while spawning sights that will track the player's position. Once he starts moving, those sights will appear almost endlessly. And what makes this fight very hard on a casual play is that there's no way to stop his momentum once he starts going, because you're constantly trying to hit him and dodge at the same time. And once you die and run out of lives, you have to restart. And you also have to repeat the infamous hell hallway that's going to come up once we climb those stairs above. Now right here is a very rare invincibility item, which I'm just going to use to just walk. It doesn't last long. Some games allow you to use invincibility for quite a bit, other times it's not so easy. But again, we'll just wait a second here. Again, checking for secrets, and I guess the developers are kind of to give that because they know what's about to happen. So this is the hell hallway. You have Medusa heads spawning in endlessly, thereby messing with how you can move and dodge, while these guys are throwing random axes, and that was a really good dodge, if I do say so myself. But using the holy water here, we can mitigate a lot of the frustration. Again, just kind of let them chase us down, and they'll go into the holy water and die. If you didn't know that trick, this part is, again, infamously difficult. Sadly, there's no trick for the next infamous section. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to move over here, start the boss fight, and then I'm just going to keep throwing holy water, as the holy water stuns the enemy. And basically, if he doesn't move, he doesn't spawn sides. And that's the fight. Again, very easy if you know what you're doing. But now we come to where everything went to hell. And I'll be fast forwarding through this part here after we explain it. But what makes this next part so difficult is that the very first boss of this game, that giant bat, is a common enemy and why he is susceptible to the stopwatch. But here, they're going to be all along this bridge, and their pattern is random. Sometimes they'll charge you, other times they'll just hang back and throw or shoot fireballs. And there are a lot of them here. So right now you can see he's just kind of hanging around. And yet, he left the screen, but again, because I didn't kill him, he should be respawning. Oh, maybe not. But you're going to see the frustration here. You see, I had to jump to avoid the enemy, but I went into the pit. If he would have hit me at that angle, it would have sent me going into the pit anyway. So I was kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So this time I'm just going to walk past him. And he's going to charge. Oh, but he's going to stop. I'm going to leap over him. But now we come to bat number 3. Now here's where I make a critical error. I used a stopwatch on this fight when I really should have used it here. If I would have done that, I will have cleared this entire section on that go. But I'm going to fast forward the footage here, and you can kind of see how many times we die. Hope everyone enjoyed that little fast forward play, because we may be using it later on in this video. But we're getting to another hard part of Castlevania, and one that can throw you for a loop if you die or you don't know what you're doing. So, as we head up here, we're going to come to another endless wave of enemies being spawned, as soon as we deal with these two guys. You're also going to see me make a very pro safety play right here, as I almost got killed making this leap. Which you're not supposed to do that, and I kind of held my breath after I performed that during the play. But this next section, I'm not taking the knife here because I want the clock, because these enemies will spawn endlessly. And again, because of their random movement, makes this extra frustrating. So I'm going to wait for a safe line, or just that. I'm going to take a second hit here, but it's worth it. Also, you will not get knocked back if you're on stairs. But those two rooms right there are very frustrating. And the best part is, once you're done them, you get right to the final level. And that's this, the infamous stairwell up to Dracula. Now, this fight is a bit easy once you know what you're doing, but it can be hard based on the pattern. There's plenty of deaths here, I'll be fast forwarding through them in a second, but I want to talk about a few key differences between how Castlevania handles its final encounter and Ninja Gaiden does its. With this fight here in Castlevania, the section that I just walked up and you just saw me die and we're going to respawn here takes us right back to it. No matter how many times I die, no matter how many continues it takes, you're going to see that same spot. More importantly, the same exact items are going to spawn from these candlesticks every time. Hearts, you're going to get holy water in that, always on that far left candlestick. And this is important because the game is giving you everything you need to beat this battle. In Ninja Gaiden, what happens is that if you die at any part during the final bosses, and yes, I did say bosses there, you must repeat 3 levels or 3 stages worth of content, and this is the absolute hardest play. Just imagine in Castlevania that whole section with the bat, the clock tower, and those infinitely spawning flea men, I had to repeat that every time we die here. That is immensely frustrating, and it is bad design. You don't want the player to feel like they're losing progress or being forced to repeat something that they've already accomplished. And at some point we may do a Dissecting Design or a classic one on Ninja Gaiden for that very reason. But with that said, while we die endlessly, and I'm going to do a quick cut as soon as we're done describing this, let's talk a little bit about this final boss. Dracula is basically randomly moves around the field. When he attacks you by opening up his cape there, he will track you based on your position relative to when that cape opens. So if I'm in the air while his cape is opening and me actually moving up in the air, the shots will track up. If I'm on the ground, they will track down. The problem, what makes this very challenging, is that the fireballs themselves shoot out in a spread. And once they begin spreading out, there is no way for you to hit them all reliably with your whip. And as you also saw, when he starts teleporting, it's very possible for him to teleport right at you and cause contact damage. For this boss battle, Dracula does 4 pips or 4 ticks of damage every time he either connects with you or the fireballs do. And what that means is that you only have a 3-hit buffer before he will kill you. So right now, as you can see, we are doing relatively okay until things go horribly wrong. Sometimes his pattern will speed up. Sometimes he'll take an extra second before he opens up his cape. Other times he doesn't. And this can add to the difficulty. And it took me quite a bit to actually get this pattern going. So I'm going to fast forward, actually more specifically, we're going to do our shout out to our Patreon backers, and we'll come back and talk about beating Dracula, and of course his final form. Thank you to our Patreon backers, and if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, check out our Discord channel, linked down below. After many deaths that you're thankfully not going to see, we had a really good run here. And I want to use this as a way to talk about Dracula's final form, because once we get to the winning play, it's going to go by very quickly. But as you can see, I was getting better at the timing for jumping, and I found that ultimately the best thing to do is actually keep jumping when Dracula starts appearing, because it kind of naturally creates the timing that you need to avoid his fireballs. And again, as long as he's tracking up when he launches his fireballs, they will not hit you. And in some cases, you can jump right above them and feel like a badass. But Dracula's about to go down, and unfortunately, it's not the end of this fight. Spoiler alert, I guess. This is his other form. What makes this fight a little harder is due to how the pattern changes. He basically has 3 actions. He will do a high jump, as you saw, a short jump at right there, or he will spit fireballs at you. Like right there, perfectly, just as I explained it. What makes this very frustrating if you don't know what you're doing is that there's no way to dodge underneath the low jump, only the high one. I ran out of holy water here, which also is not a good thing to happen. And we died right there. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit more, and we're going to see the winning play now. Hope you enjoyed that little fast forwarding that we're doing here. But this is the winning play that we have against Dracula. And you're going to see me get the timing down for this jump simply by just constantly jumping. Now, I accidentally hit that holy water, which I didn't want to do just yet. But this is when I started to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And always go for 2 hits on Dracula. And it just like naturally kind of worked out for me, which is the weird thing after all the deaths that we had. But usually if you can get to his final phase with 2 points of health or 8 pips, you're good. But this time I made sure to keep enough holy water to stun this guy. Now importantly, the reason why I'm jumping is that the head is where you actually want to hit him with the whip. If you hit the body, I think it does less damage. But basically, I get 3 hits, toss. I probably should have just gone down to 2 hits now that I think about it. And then here's our clutch play, and dead. But yeah, that was Castlevania. And it still holds up with a lot of its design. I think the pacing of the game works well, especially how generous it is in terms of progress and what you lose if you run out of lives. Someday we'll do a maybe we'll try a no continue run of the game on stream. I don't know. But that's going to do it for this Dissecting Design. Let me know what you think of this format, and we may do something similar with some other either modern or classic games. If you have any suggestions for games for me to look at, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. But thanks again for watching. Come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great night. If you're looking for another book about game design, be sure to check out my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, out now. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.